The easternmost dock of Kasumidera village stretched out into open sky, its salt-bleached planks ending in nothing at all. Below them lay only cloud and the distant amber glow of the lower islands. Jala sat at the very end with his back to the village, knees pulled loosely to his chest, a single paper lantern burning beside him. 5 feet behind, Ossian stood holding a second lit lantern, neither approaching nor retreating, both men small against the enormous dark. The wind came from below that night. It lifted the hem of Yale's coat and moved through his hair, but he did not look back. He had known the footsteps. Ossian set the second lantern down on the pier boards. The wood creaked once, then there was silence, and after the silence, nothing at all. "You left before the mochi was gone," Ossian observed, his voice quiet, barely inflected, the tone of someone identifying a star. "There was enough left for the people who were still hungry," Jala answered, even and unhurried, the way one sets down a full cup. A long beat passed. Ossian lowered himself to sit cross-legged on the pier, pulling the second lantern close. He did not open his notebook. "I told myself I was coming to check the eastern mooring lines," he admitted, the dryness in his voice worn so long it had become a second accent. "Are they in good condition?" Jal asked, and there was the ghost of something warmer in it, the shape where a smile might have been. "I didn't look at them," Ossian confessed, rueful. Jale exhaled. It might have been a laugh. It might have been something older. In a low-ceilinged room across the village, Nuri sat at her writing table in a sleeping robe, 2 clay oil lamps burning, a half-finished cup of barley tea beside a stack of quarterly supply tallies. She was not reading. She was listening to the village settle. Upstairs, Toma was told twice to go to bed, and then there was quiet, and then came Sarah's footsteps, which Nuri knew by their deliberate, load-bearing rhythm. Sarah entered without knocking. She never knocked, and Nuri had never required it. "Ossian Verath followed him to the eastern pier," she reported, measured, presenting findings rather than feelings. Nuri said, warm and unsurprised, interested. "That's the 3rd interaction between them in 2 weeks," Sarah continued, an edge in it she hadn't yet sanded down. "Ossian volunteered to correct the northern field survey boundaries yesterday, which put him on Jala's route for 3 hours. "The boundaries did need correcting," Nuri offered, gently amused. "They did," Sarah conceded on a breath. She stopped at the window, hands resting at her sides with the precision of someone who had trained the fidget out of herself early. Through the glass, far out on the eastern pier, 2 points of lantern glow burned. She looked at them. She did not know she was looking at them. "What does Ossian want from him?" she said, almost to herself, then deciding to let it be heard. "What does anyone want?" Nuri murmured, with the patience of someone who has found patience comfortable, from someone who sees clearly and asks nothing in return. Sarah turned from the window. "I'll keep monitoring," she said, the armor clean and businesslike. "Sarah, sit down, there's tea." It was not a challenge, it was a gift. A long pause, and then Sarah sat. She wrapped both hands around the second cup Nuri had already been pouring. They did not speak for a moment. 2 women in lamplight, hot clay between their palms, Nuri's hands weathered and ring-worn, Sarah's steady and bare. "You should ask yourself the same question you just asked about Ossian," Nuri said gently, not looking at her. Sarah's jaw tightened by a single degree. "I know what I want, information about a variable I don't understand." "And yet the file keeps growing," Nuri said, unhurried and warm, and it was not cruelty, but a kind of love. Out at the pier's end, the lanterns had burned lower. The clouds below had shifted to reveal a thread of distant island lights, like a second star field beneath them. Jala had turned very slightly toward Ossian, not facing him, but no longer entirely away. The wind changed. Below them, something vast moved in the cloud, a skyfish, pale and enormous and slow, visible for 3 seconds before the cloud swallowed it again. Neither man spoke about it. They had both seen it. "I have been surveying this archipelago for 11 years, Ossian said, approaching the thing from a long way off, giving it time to decide whether to stay. "I know which families water their readings and which surveyors take the thicker commission. I know the exact weight of grain that flows upward every season and the exact weight that is reported." Jale went very still. 3 months ago, a drifter came through and told Nuri Tumachi that the eastern channel reed beds were being eaten by something in the water. He was correct. He described the discoloration pattern before he could possibly have seen it from the landing dock. And I thought, that is a man who has been here before, or who has been somewhere exactly like here and paid close attention. "That's an interesting thought," Jale said evenly, waiting to see what was being offered. "I am very tired," Ossian said, past performing now, "of interesting thoughts that I write in notebooks and show to no one." Jaleh looked at him then. Actually looked, with that full assessing attention that did not feel like being measured so much as being read by someone genuinely trying to understand the language. For a moment his expression slipped from neutral to something unguarded, before he could close it again. "What would you do with a thought you showed someone?" he asked, offering it plainly. "I suppose I'd find out whether it was worth anything," Ossian answered, like a man giving the answer to a question he had sat with for years. "Whether I was worth anything, which is the part I've been avoiding." A long silence. The lanterns guttered together in a gust from below, and both men reached out at the same moment to steady them. Their hands did not touch, but the gesture was identical. Jaleh looked at the two lanterns, at his own hand on his, at Ossian's hand on the other. "The Eastern Channel isn't the only thing that's been reported incorrectly," he said, very quiet. Not a decision so much as the sound of a door, long leaning open, finally losing contact with its frame. Ossian did not move. He breathed very carefully. "No. There are 3 other survey points that would show the same kind of omission," Jaleh went on, looking back out at the sky as though speaking to the distance were easier than speaking to a person. "If someone with surveying credentials looked at them with the right questions." "That would take 2 weeks to do properly," Ossian said, understanding the weight of what he was being handed. "And it would need to look unremarkable." "You've been walking this archipelago for 11 years, Jaleh said, with the first warm thing he had offered directly, the ghost of dry humor. "A man checking his own old work seems unremarkable." Ossian was quiet a long moment. He looked down at his notebook, then closed his hand around it and set it aside. "What am I looking for exactly?" In a boy's room crowded with salvaged things, a carved float from a sky fisher's net, 3 jars of colored sand, a map with hand-drawn additions that did not match the official lines, Tomo was not asleep. He sat on his window ledge with his legs dangling into the night air, watching the distant lantern points. A piece of cold mochi sat forgotten beside him. He had been watching for 20 minutes. He's talking to Ossian, he thought, working it carefully. That's the first time. Ossian doesn't talk to people. He writes things down so he doesn't have to. But he left the notebook on the pier. He's just talking. He took a bite of mochi, chewed, and thought some more. When Jaleh fixes something, he always makes it look like it was already half fixed. Like the credit belongs to the thing, not to him. And now Ossian is sitting out there with a lantern he carried himself, and it's the same shape. Ossian is trying to give him something that looks like it doesn't come from Ossian. He looked at his own hand, at the half-eaten mochi. Is that what I do? By then, Jaleh had drawn something in the grime of the pier with the edge of his thumbnail. A rough map, 4 points marked. Ossian leaned forward over it, elbows on his knees, the posture of a man who had stopped performing and started working. Jaleh's voice had changed, not warmer, but more specific. The voice of someone who had decided to be useful about a precise thing, the only form of presence he currently allowed himself. "The 4th point is here," he said, precise and technical, but alive underneath. "Between Munakata Shoal and the upper reed line. If the numbers are the same as the other 3, the total grain that's been redirected over 10 years comes to enough to feed a secondary station, somewhere not on any official chart." "A station that doesn't exist officially can't be taxed," Ossian said, the understanding landing like weight. "Can't be inspected, can't be required to report." Said Jaleh, letting him arrive there himself. "And whoever runs such a station would have 10 years of stored surplus, which in this archipelago is leverage," Jaleh finished, half a breath, the end of the sentence terrible and known. Silence, and then nothing. Somewhere in the village below the bluff, a dog barked once and stopped. "I'll walk the first survey point at first light," Ossian said, trying to make the shape of the next several years of his life sound like nothing. "Before the fish market opens." "Wear your old survey coat," Jaleh said, looking at the map in the grime rather than at the man, protecting them both from the weight. "Not the good one." "You know I have an old survey coat?" Ossian asked, surprised into something genuine. "You have its sleeves pushing through under the good one when you've been in the field. You cover it. But the thread color is different." Ossian stared at him, then made a sound that was unmistakably a laugh. Small, rusty, the kind that had not been used in a long while. 11 years, he said, something loosened in his chest. "And my wife never noticed that." The laugh settled, and the night resettled around it. Jaleh looked at the 2 lanterns. "You should go back before the cold comes up." "Yes," Ossian said, accepting it, rising, pulling his coat. He lifted his lantern, then paused. "Whatever it is you're trying not to be, I think you're already failing at it. He walked back toward the village, his footsteps creaking along the planks and fading. Jala sat alone with 2 circles of lantern light, then one as Ossian's diminished down the pier. He looked at the scratched map, at his own thumbnail that had drawn it. A gust came up from below and erased the lines from the dust. He did not reach for what was gone. He already knew the map by heart. Far beneath the pier, deep in the undercloud, the great skyfish moved again, silent, enormous, gone. The oil lamps in Nuri's room had burned to their 3rd mark. The supply tallies remained unread. Sarah's tea was half gone, and she was looking at the table with the unfocused gaze of someone whose mind was somewhere else entirely. It was a long, comfortable silence, the kind that costs nothing. When your father came to this village, Nuri said quietly, just saying a true thing before sleep. He had nothing but the wrong name and one good knife. I gave him a bowl of soup and he looked at me like I was handing him the whole sky. He'd never had anything just given. Sarah did not move. Some people have been so cold for so long they've forgotten that warmth is a thing they're allowed to accept, Nuri went on, softer. You keep track of the variables, Sarah, but watch for when he stops accounting for the kindness as a debt. And when does that happen? Sarah asked, careful, not looking up. The question she had been not asking all night. And Nuri only smiled, warm and sure and tired in the beautiful way of someone who has lived a very long time, and let the lamplight answer for her.